What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best News Podcasts Award and 2018 Best Innovation Award or Innovation Award given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I host the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that's sponsored by Dove MenCare, and it's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And that line becomes very prominent on this live broadcast tonight. So remember that. And through my collaboration with Dove MenCare and Dad Central, I've had the blessing and opportunity to directly or indirectly reach out to over 75,000 fathers in the world this year. So I'm very humbled by that blessing. And one other thing I do, amongst others, is I am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative, which is a multimedia not-for-profit that showcases Blacks in the diaspora that are doing their thing in food, drink, and travel. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And one of the many hats I wear that you don't know about, you're going to find out another one. If you follow me for a bit, you know about this one too. I love hosting conversations with fathers from all around the world, or those who are passionate about fatherhood. And we have another new friend on the Dad's Talking journey tonight. So we're going to be speaking with Gary Barker. He's a PhD, a leading global voice in engaging men and boys in advancing gender equality and positive masculinities. He is the CEO and founder of Promundo, which has worked for 20 years in more than 40 countries around the world. Beginning in low-income areas of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Promundo approaches have been incorporated into ministries of health and education around the world. The organization is a global consortium with members in Brazil, United States, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Portugal. Hey, how come not in Canada? We're going to have to work on that, by the way. He's a co-founder of MenCare, a global campaign working in 45 countries to promote men's involvement as caregivers, and co-founder of MenEngage, a global alliance of more than 700 NGOs. He co-created and leads the International Men and Gender Equality Survey, the largest ever survey of men's attitudes and behaviors related to violence, fatherhood, and gender equality. He's a co-author of the 2015, 2017, and 2021 State of the World Fathers Reports. He's advised the UN, the World Bank, numerous national governments, and key international foundations and corporations on strategies to engage men and boys in promoting gender equality. In 2017, he was named by Apolitical as one of the 20 most influential people in gender policy around the world. He is a Ashoka Fellow and received the Voices of Solidarity Award from Vital Voices for his work to engage men for gender equality. He holds a PhD in Developmental Psychology, and I don't know if he sleeps. After all of that, I don't know if he sleeps, but let us bring to the digital stage for the first time and not the last time. Hello, Mr. Gary. How are you?
How's it going? I have not been sleeping, but now and then.
Yeah. Right back at you. How you doing today?
All right. It feels, I don't know, we're sort of slowly coming out of COVID. It feels like the fall, speed of things is happening, which I'm excited about. So good.
Good. Fantastic. Well, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to make the most of what I have with you during this time. Let our audience, I always like to do with friends the first time they come on, a little bit about your background. We've heard a lot of great professional stuff. Where did you grow up? Life as a younger Gary? What was that all about?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a lot of choice but to do this work on positive masculinities. My father, who passed away fairly recently, was a social worker. He traded a college football, scholarship and starting and all that stuff. Traded that to be a social worker. My siblings are adopted. We had foster kids.
Wow.
All throughout my childhood. So to me, manhood was about caring. And my dad lived it. He brought it home. It was his profession and his calling. And so I feel like as a role model, I feel blessed with that. That contrasted, part of my childhood, I was raised in suburban Houston, Texas. You can probably call to mind some images that involve pickup trucks and guns, and all that stuff was there. And I, including witnessing a shooting in my high school.
Wow.
Just access to guns. It was one young man. Anyway, I won't go into huge detail there, but one young
right.
man killing another. And the lack of calling out, how was it we were raising boys and young men, and still do in this country. Not by coincidence, I ended up going into Peace Corps and lived in Central America, where one of my foster sisters is from, and ended up living in Latin America for about 20 years. My trajectory went from working with street children, and I moved to Brazil in the early 90s to coordinate a study on girls who were being sexually exploited on the streets in Rio de Janeiro and Recife. And it wasn't very long into that study that I kept saying, we know the trajectories of the girls who are being exploited. What about the men who are the exploiters? And what about the men who are in the same places, the bars and wherever, who don't think it's okay? Where are the good men in these moments? And I kept asking that question in a really, really annoying way until I got some funders to fund work to say, we got to talk to men. And how do we promote healthy masculinity? And not that we had to bring it there, it was already there in households trying to make it, men trying to show the right way, young men who got out of gangs and helped their brothers get out. And in my own life, at the same time, I became a father. When I was working on my PhD in Chicago, my Brazilian wife Brazil has 5 months paid maternity leave. Since the 80s.
Wow.
So progressive for that. The US has 0 days guaranteed paid leave, as you well know. So I'm doing my PhD, and my Brazilian wife says, how did you bring me to this backward place called the US that offers no leave? And so, family discussion, and I was a stay-at-home dad, not full-time. We had a caregiver who helped us out, but my wife had 12 weeks partly paid under her work, and then she's back to the office, and I'm, taking care of our daughter. And so just had this, also this moment of how important this is as a formative experience of who we are as men. I looked around for some other first-time fathers because I thought I'm doing my PhD in child development. I can tell you how a child's mind develops, but I don't know what I'm doing here. So started a discussion group with another 5 friends who either just had kids or were in the same process. And I called them together and said, I called you here because I need help. I've got some ideas theoretically of how this works, but man, what do we do? So that combination of personal and professional got me back to Brazil, and we started this organization called Promundo, and I'm still with it. And after starting it in Brazil, we brought it to the US and a few other places. And I'll stop there. But I had no choice.
Well, and we only have a short time with you. And before we went live, I had spoken with Gary previously before we went live tonight and before the pre-show that we're looking forward for a number of conversations, because a number of things you just shared with there, I think, is very valuable for men, fathers, and those who love men and fathers. You have such a rich journey. A question I do have for you is, and first of all, condolences on your father passing away.
Thank you.
What legacy are you carrying on that your father lived?
Yeah. Oof. I'm gonna try not to cry.
It's okay.
I got to deliver his eulogy when he passed in
early
July.
Wow.
And he read at my daughter's christening, and he read a lot when he was fundraising for the child welfare agency that he led in Houston, Texas. He read from Kahlil Gibran's The Prophet.
Oh my!
If you know the where he talks about on children.
Yeah.
And those lines around your children are not your own. You are their arrows you send into the world. They're of tomorrow. They're not of today. And in a way, he I think he lived that children, we don't own them, and our jobs as fathers is not to. It's not about instruction. It's not about guiding in some sort of directed way of I will mold you into this, but that generosity of putting children into the world and setting them off and being there as that amazing source of support but never thinking that we own them.
Mm,
And I think, I think
powerful words.
we live that of just it's not about us. And I think,
Right.
whenever, as my own journey as a father, as a partner, director of an organization that tries to, do some social justice in the world, I think coming back to that issue of my dad, it was never about him. It was always about others.
Wow. It's a
Yeah.
powerful testimony. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Tell us about, you gave us the background on Promundo. It's starting off. Can you give us some recollection and reflection of the early days of Promundo?
Yeah, I was doing my PhD research on looking at young men's trajectories in and out of gangs, and I did part of that in Chicago in the U.S., which has, some of the highest homicide rates, and that homicide is very concentrated in low income, mostly communities of color. And then I did part of that work in Brazil with young men in favelas. And I think the wake up call is it's so easy to look at low income communities, and particularly low income communities of color, and think that men here are inherently violent. That in the language that we use to talk about often violent affected communities in many parts of the world is so full of racist language, of classist language, of deficit-based language. And for me, it was striking, or not, it should not even be surprising, just how many stories of caring fathers and caring men are everywhere if we just dare to look at them. And so, my conversations with young men around, I'd like to talk to some young men who have found ways to stay out of gangs and how they did it. There was no shortage of stories. Obviously, gangs caused lots of violence. Police brought even more. But the number of stories of caring nonviolent men compared to the stories of violent men, they far outnumber. And so just, the one story of, of fatherhood there, a young man named, I'll call him John
Sure.
in Portuguese. We were doing some work with the adolescent health sector and the community health clinic in one low-income area called a favela in Rio. And one of the young men who came to our groups, he came with his baby daughter. He had just become a young father. He's about 17. The girlfriend, the mother's family, didn't really want him to have anything to do with the daughter, but he was the involved father of the year. I mean, just super involved. And he came to us and he said, I can't participate today because I've got to take my daughter to get her vaccinations. But I just wanted to say hello and why I'm not coming. And myself and my co-facilitator said, let's go with you. Let's go with you to the clinic. Because we asked the other guys, when was the last time you were at the clinic? And none of them were, clinic. We don't go there. So we all went with him, about 12 of us going to the community health center. The nurse is looking at like, who are you? We normally don't see 12 guys ever in the waiting room. And we just said, we're here with our guy, João. He's bringing his daughter. We just thought it was a good moment for you to meet these guys and these guys to get to meet the clinic. And she kind of looked at us and went, of course, you're welcome. But how to make, just how to make visible, how to make normal, and just those stories. I don't think we as the adult facilitators, the staff of Promundo, our best work came from when we listened to the stories of young men, adult men who lived healthy, caring, involved fatherhood, healthy masculinity. That was the loudest thing to me. In spite of all the violence around us, the loudest thing to me was, the stories of caring manhood that were all around us.
That's fantastic. I just want to highlight one of the many things your great organization does, the State of the World Fathers report. Can you give a little background on how that started? And now it seems you've done your third one. And don't worry, folks, we will get Gary or a representative from the organization to come on and talk about it more deep dive. But Gary, if you could just give us a high level overview on how did that get started and how's it, what's some things that you found out over the years about that report?
Yeah. When we started doing some global advocacy of thinking, how do we get the conversation around healthy masculinity and men as allies for women's equality? How do we get that into the UN, international donors, national governments? The most of the conversations, most of the action at the UN, et cetera, on the topic has been around engaging men to prevent violence against women, which is vital. And that's, probably half of what we do as an organization. That's an urgent need. We're not done with it by any means. But we said, we need some other flavors, some other channels that we bring men into this conversation. And that, there is a lot of amazing fatherhood work around the world. We looked around at whether there was some kind of platform for a conversation about it. And there were a few, but not many that really tried to talk across continents and languages. So we started this platform called MenCare. It is now in more than 50 countries, and it is a platform for program ideas, advocacy, research, exchanging of lessons learned around how do we engage men as involved caring fathers, or to even more caring involved fathers. And then as we started that conversation, got some traction with it, we looked around and said, there's no kind of global indicator on how much men participate as fathers. You don't find it in UN reports. It's kind of an afterthought. If you look at the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, look at its logo. It's a mother and a child. There's no father. There's nobody else.
Exactly.
It's telling the absence of it. And so, there was a State of the World's Mothers. There was a State of the World's Children that UNICEF did, State of the World's Population that the UN Population Fund did. And we said, we're not saying, forget those things. We're saying, in addition, we think all those things get better if you talk about involved fatherhood. So we did the first one in 2015, launched it together with Chelsea Clinton, the head of UN Women, with some great journalists with us at the beginning, launched it in that big hall, the big room at the UN.
Wow.
We did 2015, 17, 19, 21. 19 was in your fair country. We launched it in Vancouver with your First Lady, with Promundo.
Yes.
She introduced us on stage there, so it's got some Canadian roots to it as well.
I got to catch up. I got some catching up. You're making foundation in my country, and I don't even know it. So I gotta get on the good foot, my man. No, that's fantastic.
It's become we launch it around Father's Day. At least many countries of the world often for many countries, Father's Day falls in June.
Yeah.
So we launch it as a conversation around what do we need? What's data telling us? What do we need to put in place to support men to be, the fully engaged fathers and caregivers they need to be?
Well, that's a tease, folks, for our next conversation, because we could spend the next few minutes on it. No, we're not gonna go there. I'm gonna start on the original reason that I reached out to Gary, and I can relate also. For those who don't know, as I said at the beginning, I do a lot of heart work, not hard work, but heart work with fathers and men. And with my collaboration with Dove MenCare, which Promundo has done work with also, one of their main focus points is parental leave. And it's in my country, in Canada, there's only one province, if you're watching the US, that's comparable to a state, one province that offers it. And Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if it's even offered at that level in the United States.
No, we are, we're at the bottom of the list. We have 0 days guaranteed paid leave for mothers or fathers. Our Family and Medical Leave Act is unpaid leave, which means you got to have some savings built up. About a fifth of workers work, slightly less workers work in a place where leave is provided voluntarily by the employer. I'm happy to say here in the District of Columbia, where I live, we share data, including on Quebec and the Nordic countries, et cetera. And we now have 8 weeks paid leave. Mothers, fathers, caregiving for a family member. It came online in July. A year ago, July.
Yeah.
So thrilled that, a few countries are doing it. But at the national level, the U.S. is a shameful, down toward last place.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm just going to put up on the screen the actual article for those who I'm going to reference from, and we'll just talk again because time is over. I'm going to show but why did you write this article?
It came out together with this latest State of the World's Fathers report, and there is a great conversation finally advancing in the U.S. on parental leave in general. So the Biden administration and the Democratic Senate is trying to move ahead on a national plan on it. Lots of corporations are getting the message. You mentioned Dove Men Plus Care. They've been supporting it, and we've been thrilled to partner with them as well. Some other brands are too, P&G, and a lot of corporations are doing it, both the messaging around it and making it available in the workplace. And yet, and that's why the hook line of making sure he takes it, men do not take all the leave that we offer them. In fact, the countries that have lots of generous leave, men are not taking their share. Even the world champions, the Scandinavians, the Swedes and the Icelanders, who have the highest percentage of men who take leave, men are only taking about 30% of the leave available to a couple.
Wow.
So they're not taking their 50% portion of it. Other countries, it's from 1% to about half of men take the full amount of leave available. So the issue is, I think sometimes policymakers or folks in the workplace think, okay, he's got leave, he's going to take it. The big issue we've got to talk about is that, is asking, so why don't men take it? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Men don't think they can take it. The main thing is basically the same thing that women have worried about forever, which is if I'm seen as a parent who puts my caregiving duties at the front of my life, at least for some amount of time, you're going to see me as a less than serious worker. Men are worried that if they take the full amount of leave,
yep,
right, we're not going to be seen as the guy who wants to be partner, who wants to get promoted, who wants to, keep his job, climb in his job, see an increase in his salary. We still think there's that men are that we think as men, we're going to be looked upon badly if we take that full amount of leave. Now, my tendency is sometimes to want to look at men and say, welcome to what women have felt the last decade.
Good take.
My man, this is what women have worried about forever, that their careers do suffer. That women's wages are lower than men. There's no country that's achieved equality on that. So I think the conversation that we need to say is this is deeper than just you as an employer, you as a government, a province, a national government, even better, saying, okay, we've offered 16 weeks for men. We're either making it equal or close to equal for women. I think it should be equal, but often you think it's done. And I think that's when we say, now that's when we get started. What does it take to do full equality in the workplace? And how do we make sure that turns into full equality at home as well? It's not just, I offer leave, check it off the box. I was thrilled to do a talk, my other home country of Brazil. I was invited to give a talk at Brazil has, as I mentioned before, 5 months paid leave for mothers. For years, it had 5 days for fathers that included a weekend.
Right.
If your child happened to be born or adopted on a Thursday,
right,
you had to be back to work on Monday or Tuesday. We got it expanded to 1 month.
Okay.
If your company you have to take sort of an obligatory fatherhood preparation course. A lot of men don't want to take that. The number of men who take those 20 days that are now available is far less than 10%.
Yeah.
So got some employers to say, a few employers have now matched it. They say women get 5 months, we're going to match it. And I'm thrilled that one employer in Brazil has said, not only are we going to offer it, we're going to make it obligatory. A man's got a child who's just been born. We're going to say, all right, James, we're helping work on the backfill. We're going to work on what are you going to do when you're off, what you'll come back to, not even to make it, women are taking it at virtually 100% rate. So I think it's that kind of nudge that we need to make sure that men take it, that they take it, they use it, and that it becomes a life-forming experience. Anyway, I said a lot about that.
No, that's fantastic. A number of questions or conversation pieces I have for you. Why do you feel corporations are beginning to see the light in regards to giving paternity leave? And another question on top of it, how much, if any, has the pandemic had on that thought process?
Yeah, good question. I mean, even before, I think some progressive workplaces, at least in a few pockets of industries, the tech industry on the West Coast in the US, some of the finance industry in the East Coast in the US, a lot of progressive companies figuring out that, the millennials valued this, that there was a desire for gender equality and dads were demanding it. And you could figure out that if you were an employer trying to attract good talent, you were looking at some numbers in terms of turnover and seeing that both men and women were leaving your firm when they had their first child. or a second one, or a child with a special need. So I think, progressive employers were saying, all right, I got to offer this to be competitive to get the workers that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came this thing called COVID, right? Which, 60 to 90% of schools around the world in lockdown, lots of men at home in numbers that we've not seen since, if ever, since before the Industrial Revolution, probably,
right.
To say that it's almost like an obligatory paternity leave for many men
Absolutely.
around the world, right?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of employers and men saying, okay, this is tiring. And, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, women saying, yeah, well, me even more than you, so, honey. But I think a lot of men going, oh, well, this, I've been able to connect with my children in a different way. I've been able to be productive, at least, somewhat. Challenges to that, of course. But I think it's made, I think COVID has been a fantastic opportunity in the crisis to say, we've all got massive caregiving duties. And now that we're on screen half the time, if not more, our bosses are now seeing, the kids and the pets and our partner and the grocery delivery and all the stuff happening behind us. I think we're being seen in, ironically, we're being seen on screens, but I think we're being seen for our full selves.
Right.
I think bosses and supervisors are getting, oh yeah, not only is he my, head of creative division over here, but he's also a dad. And look, I just saw that steady, I just saw 2 kids walk by and a dog following them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, it's kind of a wake-up call to smart employers, and I think policymakers are seeing it too, that we all have care duties and we need support at it. And it's not an afterthought, or it shouldn't be an afterthought.
Excellent. Excellent. We're beginning to see movement on this issue with high up companies. Do you think it will take even a long time for blue collar male employees to have this sort of opportunity? And does the approach have to be anything different, or is it something you would see the blue collar companies will follow the leader of these big organizations that are going this route?
Yeah, I mean, which is the important part, that it becomes national law. I think building into, that all employers have to offer it, that if you're on a payroll, there's a payroll tax that's going into covering the amount that will, that's been the Scandinavian, not just Sweden, the whole Scandinavian model for years,
mm-hmm.
right? Is that you're on a payroll and an amount goes, part of your payroll tax that covers Social Security and all the other things, covers some time that you'll be off when a child comes along, or when you adopt, or when you have I think it's even better when it includes other caregiving. So I think, to make this available for all of us, the best is when it's nationally, it's in national law, or provincial or municipal, if that's the case.
Right.
National, even better. And that is the risk when corporations do it voluntarily. And I think we've got to hold them accountable to say, it's not just the guys in the C-suite or the ones in your HQ in wherever that might be, Toronto or Geneva or New York, but that it's got to be everybody. And particularly if you're a corporation that does a lot of outsourcing and has, 20 other firms that do lots of outsourcing for you, that you need to say, hey, we want you to offer it for all your workers as well. And we've got the gig economy workers that we got to think about. A couple of cities, trying to figure out, how do we set up social insurance packages for those who are in the gig economy for lower income countries in the world. I talked about the Brazil example. 30-40% of Brazil's workers are informal sector stuff. So there, the importance of cash transfer programs, other means that you offer some financial support for childcare, as well as for some paid leave for both parents when a child comes along. But we know how to do this. I don't think we can let government say, oh yeah, we don't know how to do it for that sector of worker, or let employers say, I don't know how to reach those folks. I just know the folks on my payroll. And to say, no, we're smart enough to get this. You can deliver, my book to me in 24 hours. We are smart enough to figure out how to design a policy that can get to every worker, including that woman who delivered the book to me yesterday.
That's great. That's great. In your hard work, because I don't want to call it hard work, are the thoughts of paternal leave different in different countries, or are you seeing a forward movement in all the countries that you deal with, or are some more seeing the light than others?
Yeah. I mean, there are huge differences around the world in terms of how normal it is, how much is expected that we as men do our share of the care work. There's some countries where, men's share of the daily care of children and of homes is a fifth to a tenth of what women and girls do. It is important to say no country in the world has achieved equality on that. So for all of our work in parts of the global north and Western Europe and North America, no country, some households may have achieved it for sure, but on average, no country's got equality on that. So yeah, there's big differences of how in countries where it's expected that men do this. Typically what it goes along with is the more women are in the paid workplace, and there is typically more demand on men to do more of the hands-on care work. Now it works in the other direction too, where men do more of the care work, women can be in the paid workplace. So
correct,
both things, but I think we see it more in countries where women have been in paid work outside the home in bigger numbers. That's where you kind of start to see more advancing on that topic. But I don't want to make a blanket statement. If you say,
no, well, understood.
Yeah, South Asia, there's a long way to go for men to do their share of care work, and yet millions of stories of men who see their role as a lot of care of children, and a lot of physical contact with and responsibility and sense of that you're the most important thing in my life, even if they may not be pitching in doing their share in terms of the time.
Right.
So I think it's important that we don't kind of say we got this figured out in North America and Europe and other parts don't. I think we have huge gaps to fill as well.
One of the concerns I have when it comes to seeing paternal leave moving forward is everything these days, even if it's not supposed to, becomes politicized.
Yes.
Are you seeing this subject become politicized, even though it's about the family, human beings? Are some governments taking a political approach to this instead of be a better human approach?
This one feels like I'm gonna risk it and say I think we're winning the battle on this one.
Okay, good.
It does feel less politicized, and I think COVID has certainly been a huge wake up call for that. And I do think that even folks on the conservative side of the spectrum will say, yeah, we're pro family. There are some settings that where they'll say, well, it's a woman's job too, ... and that is about
right.
staying at home. And there are still pockets where if children are in childcare and women work outside the home, and that's going to ruin children, and it's better if women stay at home. But I think women are leading the call to end that silly myth. So I do think this one's become less politicized. Nice. Our biggest obstacles on it for a long time was the corporate sector that said, this is going to cost jobs, it's going to cost us profits, it's too expensive. We've proved it's not very expensive, to provide. Let's say you provide a total of 2 years leave for a couple who has 2 children over the course of their working lives,
right?
Which is 40 plus years. Us as an employer and a society saying we're going to pay for 2 years for you to be caregivers for that child, that is not a big deal. We can pay for that. And I think, I think the numbers have shown that the payroll tax required to provide paid leave it's a rounding error compared to lots of other things we pay for. It's real. It's usually 1.5% or 2%. But in terms of what it pays for, of reduced turnover, better retention, better worker productivity, workers who like working with you, it pays for itself. So I think we've won it. I won't declare premature victory, but I think this one, we got a momentum going for us.
How much has the impact of millennials' thoughts on this had on the advancement of this moving forward?
Yeah. The data from, the surveys that we've done or looked at from US, Canada, parts of Western Europe, in particular, we've got data on other topics from other parts of the world, but most of the kind of millennial, there's a huge demand for millennials saying we want equality. We want it at home, we want it at work. And I think that that energy is good for us. Being called out as the older generation of saying, make it happen in terms of equality is a great thing. In the US, fully 80+% of millennials say we expect, if in a heterosexual household, we expect when we have children that we will equally share this. Now, only about a third of millennial households say they achieve that.
Right.
And then when we ask them, why haven't you achieved that, what you want, those 50% or so who said they haven't achieved it say workplace policy, lack of childcare, are kind of the two big ones. So I think that, the energy, that the push of kind of, we want equality, we want it now, is a burning motor coming from the millennials. And I think, smart employers, smart politicians would do well to pay heed to that.
Excellent. Well, as we start to wind down our quick conversation, any final words you have for the audience out there in regards to men, women, their approach to parental leave, and what are you excited about in the future for Promundo?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're learning how to do this. It's, most of us, our parents didn't do this equally. So, I think we've got to give ourselves some wide berth, laugh a lot, figure out the hard part and the hard part, to use your expression there, of how do we get to equal at the workplace and at home, and to, understand this is going to take us a while to figure it out and do it well. I'm excited about a piece that we're working on, which is we want to take this conversation younger. We know that a lot of the patterns of how we are as men starts in childhood. We've got a new initiative called the Global Boyhood Initiative, which is trying to allow boys to be their fully connected, authentic, loving, caring selves. And to start that conversation younger, to say the things that we're calling out for men later on, the use of violence, bullying, homophobia, transphobia, racism, that these are built into structures, but they're also built into how we raise our children, and a belief that we need to start early with those conversations. So excited about where we're taking off with the Global Boyhood Initiative, and having conversations, including with some partners in Canada, the folks at Blueprint at University of British Columbia, if you know them.
Yes.
They've provided some fantastic input on it. We're talking to them. Colleagues at the White Ribbon Campaign, we've also seen a lot of their great materials for boys and young men. So trying to take a conversation even younger. We learn how to be caring men, caring women, caring people by the way we're cared for in childhood and at home, in school, among our peer group. And so how do we start those conversations younger is where we're headed next.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us and the audience. Looking forward to many more conversations. Congratulations on the work the whole organization has done, past, present, and in the future. If I've got it up on the screen here, if you're watching this live on the replay, how you can get in contact with the organization, it's promundoglobal.org. And Gary will be back. So stay tuned, and definitely go to the website. There is incredible work that's from that website. So Gary, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing back from you soon, and to you and the organization and your family and loved ones. Be safe and give yourselves grace.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you do.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, that was an incredible conversation. Gary, I can only get him for a few minutes, but next time I'm going to see if I can get more of him. But looking forward to it. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who watched this live on the replay. And men are important. Fathers are important. And it's really interesting, the heart work I do with a lot of men and fathers. A lot of times when the home isn't right, it's a lot of time because the father isn't present and doesn't have presence. And I think that the better, one of my mottos is the better fathers and men are, the better the families are, the better they are, and the better the world will be. That's just me, and I'm saying it, and I'm going to stand on that because it's my show. So I'm going to live and die on that one. As always, I'd like to say thank you for, again, watching live on the replay. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. If you want to watch replays of anything of Dad's talking, if you're watching again live on the replay, the link is right there. You can watch the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and if you go to the drvibeshow.com, there's a category Dad's Talking. You'll see great conversations like that. So this is how we're going to end it off. As always, I end off like this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect, and remember to give yourselves grace. All right? God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good. Bye-bye, everybody, and thanks for watching or listening.